Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the stream this evening. Excuse me, this evening. Let me zoom that out a little bit. Actually, this camera's been knocked, hasn't it? So let's reposition it a little bit. There we go. So we'll be carrying on with this particular cat hairs again. With this particular piece. Cleo has been asleep against this all afternoon. So let me just brush off the little tiny cat hairs. Which could be a pun given that she's a little tiny cat, but well, she's not that tiny, but she is getting quite small these days. Okay, so what I want to do is do something about the shadow of these two power conductors. Yeah, as they come underneath the train, I expect the shadow to get somewhat weaker and basically disappear. So let's do some work on that. Excuse me, I keep having to clear my throat. So I've got this tool turned right down. I don't want it particularly hot. I want the shadow under here, but I want quite a fuzzy shadow, pale shadow. Now I may in a moment switch to using the other tool. Because it is actually quite hard to cool this tool down enough to be quite gentle with the way in which it colours the wood. It's not doing too bad. I'll just keep it moving quite rapidly. Now I do, by the time I get under here, well to about here, it wants to peter out completely. Because there'll be virtually no shadow. So I'm just going either side of the line that I drew, just to create something that you can see but looks sort of quite diverse. Now back here at the start, I want to be a little bit more precise, sort of fading out a little bit, but very quickly becoming just a diffuse blur. Somewhat like that. And we also need to do the same sort of thing with this block. Needs to give it a really diffuse sort of shadow. Just something that's kind of visible but isn't really distinct. So I'm just sort of diffusing the end of this this shadow. That sort of thing should be enough. Excuse me. Now I'll try and do the same on the top. I want it so you can see a shadow, a bush shadow, but not a great deal of it. Eddie Fall Guy, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. And how are you today, this bank holiday Monday? Okay, that doesn't look too bad. We might have to adjust that again later, as always. So the next thing is to decide whether or not I actually want to put wheels under the skirt of this. Now in practice it does have a set of running wheels just underneath here, which hold the train from wobbling on the beam. It has big wheels that it sits on that run along the top, and then ones on the side that run along and just stop it wobbling and scraping basically against the side. Now in the reference picture you can see those. Let me try and draw them with a pencil first, which I've got there. Now, part of the problem of drawing these with a pencil, or drawing them full stop, is that we're looking up at the wheel, and getting the angle correct is fun, shall we say. And what I'm going to do, where's my other drawing? If I do it on there, let's do it on here. So we're kind of looking up at a wheel that's coming down about there. So its centre is going to be roughly there. So how does this wheel look? That doesn't look too bad. So it wants to look roughly like that. Oh, well, that does tend to make things run well, even if they weren't running well before, does that? Not a good thing to have to do, though, is a full rebuild, unless of course that's what you were after doing. Does that look right? It doesn't look wrong, that's the main thing. I'm not quite sure that looks perfectly right, but it's about okay. So we've got a centre which is roughly, now I've done that slightly higher than on there. Okay, that's not a problem though. So we've got a centre which is roughly about there. And then we do an oval. And then around the oval we do a larger oval, so that's the hub. We then represent the tyre itself, because it is using tyres. Remembering we'll have to go straight up at that point there. And the hub slightly okay, so that doesn't look too bad. Doesn't quite look right, but it doesn't look too bad. It'll do for this. Well, that does make a difference. Hard coding the file location, that doesn't help. Can't you within the program use %user or something like that to pick up the user's personal directory? %user%, one of the system variables. That way it wouldn't matter where you put it, or just I was going to say just write to the current to the application directory, but that won't work if you've put it in programs area, because that's protected protected disk space. Right, so let's do a little bit of outlining. Wow, this tool is warm. Turn the heat up a little bit. Let's outline the rim on this tool. Sorry, of this wheel with this tool. Now then, we've got a black rubber tyre. And it's the area is too small really to do with the other tool, so it looks like I am going to be doing it using this one. So this might prove challenging to create a smooth looking object with what is effectively a pointy tool. So one of the things I'm going to do here is to keep not to press down on the wood. Doing that will create a groove. I know this from experience with this tool. I don't want that groove, it'll create a tooling mark that I'm not after. VB6 won't install as the disk has become damaged. Oh, the install disk. Can't you download VB6? If you've got the serial number, then you shouldn't have a problem with that. And in any case, if you haven't used too many Well, if you haven't used anything particularly special about it, the was it the latest 2013 programming environment, I believe, includes VB. It's not VB6; it's a slightly cut down. In fact, it's VB. It's managed VB, isn't it? But unless you've used anything particularly special, then I would have thought it would compile within that environment, and it's free, of course. But if you can have a go, C# or something like that, then have fun. Fluffy Twiggler, good evening, welcome. Nice to see you back again. Thank you for dropping in. Well, this is like trying to colour in a space with a sharp pointed pencil. And believe it or not, I've got this tool turned down to less than 2. And I was about to say, and the dial goes up to 11. It doesn't, it goes up to 10, but that was one of the best marketing things, I think. I think it was Marshall Amps ever did. It was making a dial that went to 11. Inspired genius in a way. Nice try, Fluffy Twiggler. Tonight she's downstairs currently watching something else. Don't actually know what. Shouldn't use something else, should I? It's a trademark. Something else TM. So not upstairs this evening, but I'm sure she would say hello to you if she were here. I'm on my own this evening, and not even any of the cats are around. Cleo has been sleeping on the desk behind me all afternoon, and half the stuff that was on there is now on the floor, which I have to pick up after the stream now that she's gone. But and the 2 male pussy cats are somewhere. Junior is outside. I'll describe him as playing outside, but don't actually know what he's doing. Okay, I'd like that a bit darker if I can, so I'm going to turn this heat up a little bit. You've been online window shopping for cameras by any chance? Or photographic equipment? Come on, stop with the suspense. Let us know. What is it you have been window shopping for? I've been actually shopping, but that was online as well. Since I upgraded my version of Painter to the latest version over last night. And I also bought an SSL certificate, which seems to work completely differently from the way I thought it worked. But anyway, that's a different story. What is it you've been window shopping for? Okay, that's a dark enough wheel, I think. What we'll do now is just apply some colour to the inside hub of the wheel. You know what they say, don't you? How do you keep an idiot in suspense? I'll tell you tomorrow. Oh, you've been looking at the you've been looking at the art store. Paper making. Oh. So actually making your own, pressing your own paper as well. Now that could be an interesting thing to do. And camera lenses. I thought cameras might have something to do with it. I used to love looking at. Imagine you always used to sort of. What's the word? I guess you almost lusted after the long telephoto lenses, but with the really wide apertures. And sort of £800-900 lens. But. There's no way you'd ever, in a million years, afford. Well, I suppose you could, but afford to buy a lens like that. And I remember looking at them, and stuff like that, high aperture lenses. But there again. Actually, that camera still, well, it does still work, and not only that, the light meter still works. I've got a Canon OM1, which is a film camera. 35mm film. I've still got it around somewhere. Last time I remember, I know I had it out last year, and the light meter still worked in it. And I'm assuming it was working correctly. Well, that was when everything was manual. You tried paper making in college and lived? I didn't think it was that onerous. I mean, as far as I'm aware, isn't it really just making pulp, which you could do with waste paper, and then spreading it out and literally pressing the life out of the thing to dry it out. But yeah, you get to control everything then, don't you? The whole thing. And whether if you warm press it or cold press it, you get different textures, and you throw other fibres in it and you can get different results. It could be an interesting thing. That I'm not going to try it, but certainly an interesting thing. And then if you then use that paper to do something as well. That'll do for the wheel, I think. Autumn try plants and wood shavings. Yeah, they make it with reeds. You can make paper with reeds and things like that, can't you? Fairly thick grasses. I suppose anything that's got a reasonable sort of fibre in it. The less, I was about to say the less water the better, but I don't suppose it actually matters really, does it? Because once you sort of start pulping it up and washing it through, then you'll get rid of well, you'll add a lot of water anyway, so it doesn't need to be a dry medium. But getting rid of the colour might be interesting, unless you start bleaching it, I guess. But yeah, I've heard people using it with doing it with wood shavings to sort of increase the fibre content, as opposed to actually the people I heard of doing it were actually sort of using just waste normal white paper and then adding wood fibre to it through shavings. But never tried. I have no idea what I'm talking about, really. Now then, the train itself has a shield along there, just behind the wheels. But, and I'm assuming that's, stops you, protects some of the switch gear that's underneath there, or pickups on things. But I think I'm going to ignore that. Ignore the fact that this is there, and I'm just going to do some concrete. Now then, the question is, how do we do concrete? Concrete is light grey. It's reasonably good quality concrete. Obviously, you don't want the train falling off. So it's not like concrete that would be used in housing or put down on roads, which has got a lot of aggregate in it. This will be steel reinforced as well. Be a relatively smooth surface, especially given the fact that the train runs on it. You don't want vibration, and the wheel in any case would tend to smooth it off. So it's going to be relatively smooth. There's not a lot of textures in this. Not a lot of textures at all. We may have to put some plants or something down at the bottom just to add something a little bit more textury. Yeah, a little while ago I was looking at some marker pens that actually had a soft brush tip on them, so it wasn't actually hair, but it was like a fibre tip which was flexible. And I almost got a set of those just to have a play with, because you could almost, well, it was almost like, in theory, would have been almost like painting with a paintbrush. which struck me as an interesting way of doing things. So I can understand that. What was it, online? I tend to buy stuff from. Oh, I can't remember the name of the company that I tend to buy stuff from online, but I can spend a couple of hours looking through the website without even trying. So I try not to, because I'm always tempted to buy things. I kind of look at it and go, that easel looks nice. I could do with an easel like that. And then I have to kind of do my best not to spend. I'd have pastel. Sorry, I'd have I wouldn't say pastel charcoals, but you know, I'd have sets of pastels. I'd have well, I have got some watercolour pencils, but proper watercolour pencils, charcoal. I'd have the whole sets of things. And then you see unusual things, or fairly unusual things. You'll see sort of I don't know, refillable paint pens, for example, and think, oh, that's interesting. I could do something. And you end up, if you're not careful, you end up with a lot of stuff that you never actually use. He says the person who's got a set of perler beads, well, the equivalent of, sat at the other end of the studio now for several months. Plastic and aluminium rods to make trailers with for well over a year. I ought to get on with some of these things. Hopefully, I am hoping that because I'm streaming, I will do some of these things and actually do some of them on stream one of these days. And that way, I can actually do some of these things that I've got to one side for some day. Now, this bit underneath here is the underneath of the beam, so I can go over this edge without a problem because the underneath will be darker, which makes it a bit easier working around here. And for some reason that crossed my mind just then, I spent most of this morning, I got sidetracked. I was going to do something else completely, and I got completely sidetracked because I came across a comment on one of the YouTube videos I was playing at the time, which reminded me, because it took me to the website, of Dilbert. Don't know if anybody's familiar with Dilbert. But it's the Daily Dilbert comic strip is utterly amazing. I was trying to remember now. I think the guy that does it actually has worked in an office before, but it's the Daily Dilbert comic is so true to office life. It's absolutely amazing. You can, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but if not, I'd kind of highly recommend checking out Scott Adams and his website and the Dilbert comics, especially if you do work in an office, because I am sure that you will recognise not only the people but the situations as well. So I spent most of this morning reading from, I think, February through to the 30th of August. It's one of those things that when you start reading, you can't really put it down. You just keep clicking for the next one. Now I know where this tyre runs, obviously. Well, not obviously, but there is. It creates a tyre mark on the beam. Probably just from wheel slip, but so what I'm going to do is put in a dark mark. Harry Potter references now. Turn this up a bit. Come on, Wood. You're not reacting. Got this turned up quite a bit, and the Wood's not reacting. The tip's hot, but the kit of pens, or the kit for your paper making. You have to start and sell the paper at college. You might be able to pay your college fees. Oh, both. Well, you never know. I mean, you get a good paper for art is worth paying for, if you see what I mean. I'm sure you do. It's getting paper that is just right for something. is definitely worth it. So you never know. You might find a market. Now, particularly around this sort of area, I am not fantastically bothered about things like darker spots, as you might just see odd ones around in here, and sort of this dark, sort of fairly wandering line. I am, well, I'm not purposely introducing the texture, but I'm not attempting to remove it either. As I said, the train is running along here. It runs umpteen times a day, and it will slow down, speed up, and it will deposit tyre rubber onto the side of the beam, and it will be relatively random as to where it is. And so I'm not fantastically bothered about the fact that I might be getting odd marks. I do actually need to make it fairly dark. So for colours, does it matter? I mean, they're not training you on particular media. It is really just a case of you getting to choose your own media for what you do. So they just set a broad assignment, and you fulfil it in any way in which you like, or do they actually go into sort of media training in terms of different methods of drawing or colouring or what? I have no idea what I'm talking about. So despite being good at art at school, I never had any interest in doing it at university. What I'm trying to do is just get underneath this edge here, as well as the dark marking from the tyre. Underneath the edge is going to be dark. Obviously there's not a lot of space, as you can see, between the edge of the beam and the side skirts of the train. There'll be a lot of shadow, it'll be quite dark. So that's what I'm trying to get in here, is a really sort of dark top. Graduate it out a little bit as we come down, and it'll get darker underneath the beam as well, or a little bit darker. one of the problems of the underneath of the beam is I won't actually have anything there unless I put something in place, and it might be an idea to do that, but I won't actually have anything to signify that it's the underneath. With I could, for example, put a joint in there, and a joint would then, because of the angles of the lines, would give you an indication that it's underneath, as I will be doing with this pan that's there. These three bottom sections are like a tray that sits underneath the track. So what I actually might do is I actually might put in something around here, put in a beam, sorry, a pillar, just in order that you actually get to see something three-dimensionally, which gives you the idea that this is the underneath. I'm thinking about that as I go along. Oh, okay. Now that, you see, would be kind of a little bit daunting to me. It's kind of like, here's the end result, do it however you like, is a little bit sort of daunting. If it's kind of like, here's the end result that you're supposed to get to, and you're supposed to do it using these materials or something, it would bother me a lot less. When I've got so many choices, that's when it's really hard. When you've got no choice, it's really easy. But of course, I suppose that's what they're trying to teach you anyway, isn't it? It's the being able to do it, fulfill the thing yourself without needing to be told. Okay, I'll do it that way. I'm just kind of working out then. Tires are black. The shadow is black. Which one's blackest? And what I've decided to go for is the this shadow area is the blackest. It'll be relatively, well, quite subtle, I guess. As you can see, I've turned the tool upside down, and by turning it upside down, I'm just using the very tip. And what I'm doing is just placing the tip on the line and dragging downwards, and that creates a very sharp top line, quite a thin line as well, which is why I'm dragging downwards. but because the tool is only conducting heat away from that very, very small tip area, it's heating up quite a bit, and conducts the heat quite well down to the tip. So the tip, in doing this, it's going really dark straight away. But I'm trying to do all this without pressing too hard into the wood, because if I did, I know I'd create, and indeed I am anyway, creating a little sort of valley. If I press down, I'm trying not to press down. It still creates a valley because the wood shrinks away. But by not pressing down, I'm trying to minimize how much that little divot becomes, because then it stands out. It reflects light slightly differently, and you get sort of what should be black appears lighter because of the reflections. In a way, you're lucky, 40. Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose that is the advantage of picking something fairly different, isn't it? That you can all you can try that. Hopefully somebody else doesn't, and therefore you've what tools may be available to you within the college you've got access to without having to wait. Yeah, because I can imagine that gets quite frustrating. You've got an idea or something you want to do, and you can't because somebody else is using the press or whatever it is that you happen to need. I know that's when it's a long time ago, when I was at school, I did metal work because very few people wanted to do metal work, and I used I created chessmen using a lathe, because there were three big lathes and one smaller engineering lathe, and nobody wanted to use the big lathes. They were all sort of scared of them, but a lathe's a lathe. So I got to use the big lathes for doing small things that I could have done on the engineering lathe, but they all wanted to use that because it was smaller. It had a chuck size of about that size, and I'm doing sort of aluminium chessmen of about that diameter. So I'm doing it on a big lathe, which has got about an 18-inch chuck, but it worked. And most of the other people at school wanted to do woodwork, and wanted to do bowls and things like that. So I think everybody they managed to give everybody at least the chance to turn one bowl, because the number of lathes they got, wood lathes they got. But with metalwork, I used it every week for the whole term. Yeah. Hence the paper making as well. Okay, yeah. But yeah, choice. I like choice. Don't get me wrong. I like having the choice. I don't like having to choose. That's the hard bit. And of course now I get to I get more choice. I get to choose what I want to do and when, and what medium I want to use, and if I want to try something new. So it's the worst thing of all worlds. I've decided to use the tool this way up. It doesn't create as much of that narrow, deep ridge or sort of furrow. That is, doing it that way is ideal for fur. That's how I did the cats. I discovered it by accident doing a practice on another train to use this particular tool upside down, because it creates a really sharp, narrow texture, which the writing pen, which I thought would do that, doesn't. It's more rounded and it doesn't look so much like fur, so I was quite pleased to discover it. And this, for some reason, does it better than that one. I don't know why. Maybe one end's sharper than the other, but actually, having said which, I suppose no, I was going to say I've got a knife blade, but it's not actually. That would be too sharp for fur, or the representation of fur that I do, shall we say. All I'm doing here is going to the line and dragging down. And I'm not trying to make the way I drag down to the same every time. It's within a short sort of radius, but it creates like a soft bottom edge, not as sharp as the top, and it sort of fades it out very slightly at the end. And I will probably come back and extend that down a little bit, but that's more shadow like than what I was doing before. Because I have no idea what I'm actually doing. I'm making this up as I go along and sort of looking at the results and going, yeah, that works. Ow. Yes, thank you, Colour Monkey. Thank you very much for that. That's kind of you for interrupting my stream to tell me that. So we'll turn the sounds off on there. For those of you that may not know what Colour Monkey is, it's a hardware device which you use to colour calibrate a screen, and you create a colour profile with it, and then you essentially do the same thing with printers and the paper outputs or any other thing. And if you do the same thing with a camera as well, what you can then do is apply those colour profiles such that you see on screen, or rather what you see on screen is the correct colour that the camera thought it was taking when it took a picture, and when you print it out you get the same colour again. So if you calibrate your screens and the camera and the printer, you get a consistent colour all the way through. Something that's done a lot in the publishing industry. I do it from time to time, not as often as I should. I should literally calibrate the screens about once a month, but I only tend to calibrate them when I'm actually want to do a printout, just to make sure I get the same thing. But colour calibration and colour profiles is one heck of an awkward thing to get your mind around. Actually, Fluffy Twiglet, I bet that's something you know everything about, isn't it? Colour profiles and colour profiling, should I say. I kind of only half understand it myself. Well, no, I understand the principle, but understanding exactly how to apply it on the PC is a little bit more challenging. So now I'm extending the shadow down a little bit, sort of allowing it to fade as I come down. Again, not being particularly precise about it. Some areas are a bit darker. That's alright, you know, it's... What the heck, I'm the artist if I say it's not smooth. It's not smooth. You know colours, yeah. Well, maybe you could actually explain it to me. I understand, I literally do understand the principle of it all being around, but I have, for the life of me, trying to understand when you import an image whether you should use the colour profile of the image or not in the application, and whether that should override the screen profiling. Yes, it messes with my mind. Does that one. As I say, sort of logically it makes perfect sense. Yeah, so if a camera sees a particular blue, your screen shows exactly the same particular blue, and your printer, if it's capable of it, shows exactly the same particular blue. I understand that. I just wish the industry would make it easier to understand not the concept but the actual execution of doing that. I never actually found a good web description of it at all. For anybody that's watching and thinking, I'm spending a lot of time on what looks to be a really small area and a small set of details, quite often with an image, it's the small details that make the whole difference between something looking okay and something looking like it's real or looking right. and it literally can be as much as a bit of a shadow in the right place that completely changes how something looks, or just the light at the right angle, just a small flare, or reflection, just a little spot of reflection. I mean, it's something like, actually I was looking at a picture this afternoon, an airbrush image that I did of a cat, and it's quite a close-up on its face, and there's a white spot in the eye which is a reflection. And I remember that just came to mind now, because that white spot makes the eye look wet. Without that, it looks flat. It doesn't look realistic. Just that reflection makes the eye look wet, and that makes the eye look real. So small details, and I'm just messing about here with a small detail of a shadow, can make a considerable difference to the end image. Which is probably why we'll need to shade some more of the cabin at some point, because there's no difference in colour across from the top to the bottom to tell you it's curved. Sort of. Fluffy Twiggler. I think, yeah, it sort of makes sense. It's it's I know it's all to do with sort of things like a camera that if you pick a what they'll be using, sort of 24-bit color. So if you picked a 24-bit set of values, that would represent, I don't know, a color yellow. If you display that on screen, your screen thinks it has a little bit more blue in it than the camera did, and therefore it doesn't look the same yellow. It tends towards green. Sorry, well, with more blue in it, tend towards blue, to tend towards a purpley sort of hue, and things like that. So. I guess he has been looking at some of his mates then, if he knows what a perfect example looks like. Anyway, Fluffy Twiggler, if you feel like using ban rather than timeout, feel free to do so. Creams, good evening, welcome. Nice to see you again. And how are you doing? I don't think you've been streaming much recently, have you? Just trying to recall. I don't think. Either that, when I've had a chance to look, there's been times when you haven't, which is perhaps more likely. Oh, that's getting hot. You got back from holiday? Ah, okay. That would explain it. I'm not doing too bad, thank you. Unfortunately, whilst it's a bank holiday today and I've had the day off, I've got to go to work back to work tomorrow. If I stopped speaking too fast, I'd make more sense. I've had most of my holidays for this year at least. I've had my main holiday anyway this year. I don't mind mine too much, to be honest. I quite enjoy what I do, so that does help. There are times when I don't, I admit, and there are times when it's kind of, especially if I'm doing a nice art piece or something like that, it's kind of, what time is it? Isn't it? Yeah, isn't it 5 o'clock yet? No, it's 9:10. Oh. Isn't it 5 o'clock yet? No, it's 9:30. When I really want to get on with something, but dear. Most of the time I quite enjoy it. Whilst I'm not working in arts, I work with numbers. It's a problem solving type job most of the time, and that I find quite creative and I enjoy doing. So I do luckily have a job I don't mind doing. Joe, there again. I wouldn't mind doing. I was going to say I wouldn't mind doing that all the time. I actually wonder whether I would or not. You still manage to come home white. I try and come home white. That's my aim. My Mrs. Aragon tries to come home brown. I sit under umbrellas. I sit with a t-shirt on and shorts. Okay. I read a book. I come looking brown. She comes back having sat out in the sun looking white. I try really hard. I sit in the shade and I come back brown. So sorry. Yeah, like light bulbs. That's one reason I've got cool white lights in here. They rather than actually half of them are cool white, half of them are incandescent, so they're a warm white. And so the idea being at least the mix, because cool white's a bit too cool. But the idea is the mix will give me something more of a natural sort of daylight sort of colour temperature. I think it's about 5,000, is it? I can't remember now, but that's kind of the idea. So that when I was doing airbrushing, the colour representation was closer. But yeah, when you start getting cameras involved and colour balance and white balance and colour sensitivity, and if there's a filter on the front of some kind, or even any kind of plastic lens cover, which this has got on, just how much they affect and filter out certain colours. And I remember having to play about that when I was doing video, sort of do some colour shifting. I haven't quite worked out though why this camera shows the blue quite so much. I mean, I'm I can kind of see why it looks blue, and occasionally they do. I'm looking at a packet of the purple rings now, and they look purple, especially in this light. But I'm sure if I bring them to the camera, yeah, they're blue. It's just not picking up it's almost as though it's not very red sensitive. And yet I have tried injecting a little bit of red into the as an overlay on a snapshot taken from a frame, and it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't bring the purple back, and then I've got to deal with the red overlay, but that wouldn't be so much of a problem. So weird. It was the first time on a plane and on okay. You had one of those behind you. Oh, I've had those. They keep standing up so they pull on the headrest, or they sit with their feet just back so they're kicking the seat back all the time. Yeah. Either that or they never shut up. I'm not so bad. If I read a book, I can get so involved in it I don't actually hear anything. But yeah, sometimes. Unfortunately, Mrs. Aragonat doesn't like reading, and she doesn't get into it quite that much. So if there is somebody sat behind who is, shall we say, less than quiet, she does get a bit stressed. Find your zen. It's odd. One of the jobs I had when I was at school was stacking shelves in a supermarket, and amongst other things, cleaning the floors and things. But it's quite amazing with doing that. There was a process not of stacking shelves, but what we used to call racking down, which was where people go into a supermarket and take the can off the bottom of the stack, if you like, and leave top ones hanging, and just generally make it untidy. People make things look untidy, so you tidy everything up, turn the labels around so they're all visible, and you get into a state of doing that which is almost zen-like. You're kind of zoned out, and it's really peaceful no matter what's going on around you. It's really peaceful and quite calming, and yeah, it's a long time since I felt like that. I like that sort of feeling comes to me if I go on the top of a hill where there's a wind blowing. In Yorkshire, we've got the Yorkshire Moors, and go up there where there's nobody around, basically, and just stand or just walk across them all, and with the wind blowing, and I can completely zone out and get really zen. Yeah. Well, the seats are never fantastically comfortable anyway. They always, well, I always get sort of backache, and yeah, I can imagine sort of for you that would get really painful. Yeah, and there's no point in learn quite often. There's learn quite quickly, shall we say. There is no point in leaning over the back of the seat and being very polite and asking people to stop doing it. It doesn't work. It works for about 3 minutes, and then they're doing it again. I've heard other people getting into that sort of argument as well, and it's kind of like, you didn't, can you not persuade your child not to kick the back of my seat, please? And it's, well, you didn't have to come on this plane. No, and neither did you. I had a choice. You have a choice. And it's sort of, you kind of feel like it would be really nice and interesting one of these days just to see what the reaction is when it's yeah, and I've got a choice of slapping him around the head as well. But of course you can't say that sort of thing, and you wouldn't do it anyway, but it would be fun to see the reaction. You've finally given in, have you, Fluffy Twiglet? Why wait till tomorrow then? Why wait till tomorrow? If you've given in and you've given up on resisting, then go for it. The one I actually hate creams is, well, apart from I don't like being kicked in the back or somebody sticking their knees in your back either, because that's another one where they sort of slide down in their seat and therefore their knees are pressed in your back. Is the kid you laid nice by the pool, in my case laid under an umbrella by the pool, and you'll get a kid that insists on jumping in right by you, not by where they're sat. They'll come running across and leap in sort of bomb style just where you are, and then you get a wave of water over the top of you, which of course sucks to sunbathe. I'm reading a book, electronic book, so that gets wet, and it's kind of like, why didn't you go over there? Because their parents don't like it when they get wet, do they? I see, Puffy Twiglet. Yeah, I kind of know that. I think I've come across me doing that before. It's not so much a case of accidentally, it's more a case of, oh, blow it, I want it anyway, I'm going to order it. And, yeah, I really did want 24 of that particular colour of pen. Oh, I'm feeling evil creams because the thought that crossed my mind then would be, I wonder what the reaction would be if you pulled out, well, let's say a replica firearm and pointed at him and goes, who do you think's going to win this time? But you know, again, I am making a joke out of it because I know it's really annoying. Yeah. It is, yeah, it really is. It's really disruptive, isn't it? I know. I'm getting, well, both me and Mrs. Harrigan. I'm getting old. You know that. I don't make any. I don't make any sort of. I'm not hiding that fact. And I kind of getting a little bit less tolerant these days of things like that. And we have a tendency. Well, apart from the fact we like going to a particular place, but we have a tendency these days to pick adult-only hotels, you know, without kids, just because of that sort of thing going on. It still doesn't stop the adults doing exactly the same thing, but they do tend to be sort of slightly less annoying about it when they do. Yeah. You should have, yeah, go over and say, do you think you'll be able to put this back together after I break it into 6 pieces? Yeah. I've seen things like water guns made out of using sort of really high pressure air cylinders and really, you know, really fine nozzles. So it's sort of the sort of nozzle that you cut through wood with. You know, water jets cut through wood, and you kind of feel like sort of standing from 200 feet away and going, now then. it it's after the fact. It's fun to imagine all those things that you're never gonna do. It wouldn't even be possible to do, perhaps. But what if? Now I sort of wanted to get a tire mark in there, but I don't know whether that's actually going to bother. We might down here. Let's assume it maybe is a bit too dark under here. It kind of doesn't look like it would fit if I tried it. What I might do is just create a... I might come back and create just sort of like a slight mark down the side. It's kind of looking to me as though the shadow is dark enough that it might just sort of not particularly make it visible. So we might put something like a tire mark, or a darker mark, shall we say, just across there. I'm just looking and I'm going, I do like that shadow. I mentioned earlier about little details sometimes that just make something sort of stand out, and that is kind of one. And I'm looking at it here, but it really makes it look as though those wires are standing proud of the larger sort of lighter lines are standing proud of the background, and you're getting a shadow underneath, and that actually makes it really stand out. Do I use reference pictures? Yes. Usually. I'm not fantastically good at using the reference picture that's in my head. I am much better at using reference pictures that I can physically see, which is a bit silly because it's a better image in your head, if you know what I mean, but you've got to keep the same image there all the time. This one is based on an airbrush painting that I did a number of years ago, but it was one of the first airbrush paintings I did, which is that one, which itself was done from a photograph that I took actually in Disney World. Where's my mouse? There we go. So I took a photograph in Disney World of the trains. That's a good number of years ago, and when I first started airbrushing I tried to create one. It's not a bad image. It's not a bad airbrushing. I could do a lot better these days, and there's a few things that I learned from doing it. But I was looking at this the other day before I started doing the pyrography, and I just thought, you know what, it might be fun to just try and do that one again. So we at the start of the stream, I'm just trying to reach something that's underneath my chair. So at the start when we did pyrography, I just took a blank sheet of paper and drew it out, and then traced that down onto the wood, and then worked from there. So it's kind of a, that was hand drawn. This is hand drawn. So that's the reference for this particular one. Thank you very much, Creams. I could find out all the errors, but I won't bother. If somebody has an oh wow reaction, I'll leave it at that. Of course the oh wow reaction could be, God, that's terrible, but I don't want to say, but that's quite alright. It was one of my first, so I learned a heck of a lot from doing it. I'd forgotten about that. I've just seen something on there which I haven't got on the main image, on my pyrographic image, and we might have to put in. The bit I've just seen is there's this wing or side skirt. There's the one on the other side is actually visible below the beam. That's white. That's the curved edge there in the dark area. So I'd forgotten about that. It's okay. I'm just it's my sense of humour. It's my sense of humour. But let's put that back to one side. So I'm kind of working from that, or I was working from that. I'm kind of just making it up as I go along to some extent. That's the master image, if you like. just helping me sort of visualize it when I can't see it in my own head. That's something I have to practice. I read a lot of science fiction books, especially when I'm on holiday. I can read sort of 20 or 30 quite easily, and when you're reading them, I get images of the scenes in my mind, and I would love to be able to put those down on, whether it's pencil, whatever the medium. I'd love to be able to get those images out and onto some tangible medium, but I just can't do that. I can see the image, I just can't translate it, and it's something I guess I ought to practice somehow, which is really just lots of drawing, I guess. But I really hate not being able to actually execute something. So when I draw something, I like to draw something I know that I'm going to be able to draw, and whether that's using reference pictures, and it doesn't have to be a similar reference pictures. I've got loads of these trained, for example, and they all sort of look the same. But I would love to be able to just take the reference picture out of my mind and get that on something. Yeah, it can be. It can be very dry, can mine. And I can pick up on phraseology as well sometimes, about things. Somebody will just say, well, I mean, the typical one with pyrography, somebody will go cool, and I'll go, no, actually, it's bloody hot. It's that sort of, sometimes that sort of humour, a bit slapsticky as well sometimes, is that. But yeah. Right, so I need to get dark just underneath there, and then not so much there. I need to get this really dark just against the tyre here. So that when you're here in person, you can see see the difference between the edge and the tyre. I think that's probably going to stop about there, roughly. So we'll just drag that sidewards a little bit. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. Yeah. I got caught out with it the other day, though. There was I think it was an abbreviation, and I wrote an email to this guy, and I said, "Do you know what this abbreviation means, please?" And his response was back was, "Yes, thank you very much," which was it. I just cracked up for about 5 minutes. I wasn't quite rolling on the floor, but for about 5 minutes, I just cracked up because that's my typical response when somebody asks me the same question, and I got caught out. And then the fun bit is actually trying to think, how do you actually ask the question to get the answer, which is the answer that you're after is what the abbreviation means. But you know, when you say, if you say something like, "Would you tell me what it is?" Yeah, I'd tell you. Well, what is it? You know, it's an abbreviation, and you can avoid, if you really want to, you can avoid answering what is the obvious question, but it's really hard to ask that obvious question. But yeah, warning ducks crossing was another one. What is it? Yeah, and it's punctuation is an odd one as well. You see things like that one was warning ducks crossing, and it's okay. So there's a crossing for warning ducks. What's a warning duck? What does XYZ mean? Yeah, that's a hard one to avoid. Yes, you're right. That's a hard one to avoid. What does it mean? If I tried really hard, I could think of a way around that. Because again, you could avoid saying what the abbreviation meant. Well, you could say what it meant, but not what it is. It's like TLA. What does it mean? It means that you have taken words and changed them into a short form, which is appropriate to the words that were used. Or something. I'm making this up. And of course, TLA stands for 3-letter abbreviation. But you could sort of do that. But yeah, that's closer. That's a harder one to avoid. You're right. Oh, what was it? I was the I generally work from home, but last week I actually did go into the office, and I'm just trying to think now, because at one point I literally fell off the chair and was rolling on the floor because I was laughing at something, and it's one of those things that at the time was incredibly funny. But if I was to try and recount the story now, and it was just to do with the cat, the way a cat had slept on my keyboard and locked the PC out, and the guy I was talking to in sort of a internal public forum just referenced the cat in some way. Sort of it fixed the problem but couldn't do anything about the cat, and just the way he said it just had me rolling about on the floor. I've got a funny sense of humour. Okay, Fluffy Twiglet, have a good evening. Enjoy your ordering tomorrow, and we'll see you again. Thank you for dropping in. Oh, we're close to finishing anyway, so you won't miss much. Right, so I've got the main sort of bit there, so now this is kind of light or lighter. And again, what I'm going to do is do this lighter, because we can always darken it. Have limited scope for making things lighter if I've made them too dark. I'm going to potentially lose that shadow, but that's not a problem. I can always darken it down. Now this still will be in shadow. We've got a big nose still over the top of this bit to about here with the sort of the shadow angle. I mean, this is a bit mixed anyway, because the wherever the sunlight is, the shadow here suggests the sun's up here. The shadow of these would suggest the sun was over here. The actual shadow positioning on this area here was position the sun up here, and some of the shading around here would position the sun up there. So it's kind of a bit mixed at the moment. Some of it I can get away with, you know, you just won't really notice the sun angles, and generally speaking the shading around here will be enough that it doesn't really make much difference. But it's interesting how you can look at something and go, it looks not bad, without actually realizing that technically it's wrong. And kind of normally I wouldn't point out things like that. I'd wait for whoever was looking at the image to point out things like that, because most people don't notice them. But it's quite often, if it looks okay, people ignore what are sometimes fairly obvious errors, just because as a whole it doesn't jar, it doesn't stand out, as though, you know, you put traffic lights on green, amber, red the other way up, it would look really odd. You don't get quite the right colour of green, people won't notice. It's that sort of thing. Yeah, it does show up on camera. This is about the lightest shading I can get. The camera actually does show it up quite well. That's not so bad here. It's about the lightest shade I can manage to get on this piece of wood. Is that? And it's not quite invisible, but I can only see it is shaded because of the contrast between an unshaded part. When I'm here in person, looking at the screen, I can see it a little bit more obviously. Right, I want it to not be as dark as this, but I do want to sort of darken it down a little bit, because we're still under where the skirt is and where the nose is. And I am imagining wherever the sun is, it's fairly high in the sky. Probably actually going to need to make that darker, because otherwise this I can't make this lighter. It's uncoloured completely at the moment, and I kind of do really need to apply a bit of colour to it. But what we'll do is work our way across and then come back if we need to darken it down again, because I probably have to darken at least some of this area down here as well. that made me jump. Armoured Knight 42. Thank you very much for that. That's most kind of you. Welcome to the studio. I saw the flash of light and it made me wonder what on earth was going on. And then the music hit. Or the sound hit. The little jingle that plays. Okay, I'm going to have to go back over that area of the sort of extended shadow a little bit. Again, just to darken it down so that it's a really sort of nebulous shadow. It's a really pale shadow at that point, but I do want to make it just visible. So all I need to do is just make it slightly darker than the background image, which is what it was, as you can see across the top there. You can just about see it anyway. The idea is you can just about see it and you can sort of see that it kind of fades out. Now that I've put this sort of background shading in, you can't see it anymore, but all I need to do, as I say, is do the same sort of thing, but just make it slightly darker than the background and it will sort of stand out again. Yes, in your settings you can set it so you can only you only get whispers from people that you follow, I think it is. I don't think you turn it off altogether, not sure about that, but if you go into your settings, where are the settings? I'm just having a look. Yeah, under your name at the top, in the top Twitch banner, it's a drop down. You've got settings in there. One of the settings is to do with the whisper. As I say, I think you can only turn it off for people that you're not following. I'm not sure you can turn it off altogether. You know what? I think we're going to, because I'm feeling a bit warm here. It's 25 degrees in the studio, but I think we're going to have some rain around here, so the humidity's up a bit. I think I've done enough for tonight. I've done a reasonable amount. I think got a reasonable amount done. Surprising how long this sort of stuff takes, but I am quite pleased with the wheel that we've put in, the shading underneath the train here and on the beam. Got to extend it up onto the upper parts of the beam, and the shading that was done, the extra shading that was done for the power lines here, which I've now got to redo, but at least it proved the concept. So I think that's worked well, and thanks Creams for asking about the reference image, because it's reminded me that I should perhaps be able to see a little bit of the other side skirt down here, which I may put in or I may not. I may look at it and go, I tell you what, I won't bother, but I may well do. So thank you for that, for at least asking a question that drew my own attention to it. But I think Keep getting about chat room or something. I thought you could only... I thought it was only person to person whispering. Let's have a look. If I go... Up, link in new tab. Let me go there. Settings. Security and privacy. Yeah, in the settings, security and privacy, you've got a section which is block whispers from strangers, but if you're following them, then I don't think you can. So if you're following League of Legends, then I don't think you can do anything about it, unfortunately. I don't know whether Better Twitch TV will let you sort of ignore somebody. I don't know if you can do that at all. That is something I'm not familiar with. But anyway, we shall leave this for tomorrow. We shall do some more of it tomorrow night. So thank you everybody for watching. You too, Creams. Thank you very much, and good night to you as well. So just the final advert, which is if anybody that's watching isn't following, I would certainly be grateful if you wanted to do so. But if you don't want to and you just like a notification, then you can follow me on Twitter @Zeragonart. Details for that are below the stream window. They'll be on the end plate again in a minute if you miss that. If on the other hand you'd just like to try and catch me tomorrow night or on future streams, I stream from 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, or approximately 2 hours ago. That was 8 o'clock here in the UK. Thank you all. It's been fun. Aaron Knight 42, thank you very much for following, and I hope to see you all again on a future stream. Bye bye.